10 of the wealthiest people to have ever lived. When someone says richest person, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, or Warren Buffett may come to mind, but that's just now. Historically, there have been people whose net worth has far exceeded that of the present affluent. Number 10, Muammar Gaddafi. When he was assassinated in 2011, Libyan dictator Colonel Gaddafi was worth $200 billion. That's almost 3 times as rich as Carlos Slim, the Mexican business magnate who ranked number 1 on Forbes' billionaires list, and 10 times that of King Abdullah of Saudi Arabia. Gaddafi's wealth came from control over African oil reserves for over 4 decades, and of course, the ruthless exploitation of his people. Like most rich eccentrics, Gaddafi had a penchant for fancy things like large chandeliers, liquor, and golden guns. But what really takes the cake is his solid gold, mermaid-shaped couch with a head that resembled his daughter. Number 9, William the Conqueror. The first Norman King of England and Queen Elizabeth II's ancestor, William I, the Conqueror, had about $230 billion in today's worth to his name. His riches came from the old-fashioned way, pillaging and grabbing land from the people of England. William acquired so much land that the wealth inequality in present-day England is attributed to him. English author Kevin Cahill says that just 160,000 families, that is 0.3% of Britain's population, own 70% of the land in the country. All of them are William's descendants. Number 8, Mir Osman Ali Khan. The 6th Nizam or monarch of Hyderabad in India, Mir Osman Ali Khan, was so rich that he used an ostrich egg-sized diamond, the 5th largest in the world, as a paperweight. His wealth stood at about $230 billion in modern-day estimates. The Nizam was featured on Time magazine's cover in February of 1937 as the richest man in the world. He owned a fleet of 50 Rolls-Royce cars and nurtured a penchant for precious stones, jewelry, and women. It is said that when he died, he left behind 86 mistresses and over 100 children. The Nizam was a faithful ally of the British Crown, due to which he was one among the 5 Indian princes to receive a 21-gun salute from the British. Number 7, Nikolai Alexandrovich Romanov. You probably remember Nicholas II as the last Tsar of Russia. Before the Russian Revolution took place, he was worth $300 billion during his reign. Nicholas II had a weakness for military uniforms. In 1910, he spent 20,000 rubles on new military uniforms that he could flaunt to friends and family. He also had a lavish train fitted to be much like his palace. The Tsar owned the world's longest yacht at 401 feet long. After he was canonized by the Russian Orthodox Church in 2000, he also had been called the world's richest saint. Number 6, Andrew Carnegie. The self-made billionaire Andrew Carnegie has a rags-to-riches story. Born in Scotland, he migrated with his parents to the United States in 1848. As an adult, he ventured into the steel industry and made investments in roads, bridges, and buildings. This left him with a net worth of $310 billion in today's worth. Carnegie gave away about 90% of his wealth, about $65 billion, especially towards education. His funds helped build about 1,700 libraries in the United States and over 800 in other countries across the world. He was a strong anti-imperialist, offering the government of the Philippines $20 million to purchase its independence from the United States in 1898. Number 5, John D. Rockefeller. The American oil king and founder of Standard Oil Company, John D. Rockefeller is thought to be the wealthiest American of all time. At the peak demand of oil and petroleum, Rockefeller controlled 90% of all oil in the United States. He had about $340 billion worth of assets. Rockefeller was so rich that when FDR signed the Revenue Act of 1935 to tax the rich, he was the only person in the highest income bracket. Rockefeller was also a dedicated Northern Baptist, serving as a trustee, clerk, and occasionally even as a janitor at his church. Number 4. Mansa Musa. The 14th century West African ruler, Mansa Musa, controlled over half of the world's salt and gold production during his reign. Although his wealth was incalculable, some think he was the wealthiest individual to have ever lived, with a net worth of almost $400 billion. He went down in history for his extravagant pilgrimage. He took 500 slaves who lugged 4 pounds of gold each, in addition to 100 camels carrying 300 pounds of gold. Musa spent it recklessly in Cairo and Mecca, causing gold prices to crash almost 20% in Egypt. Yes, he single-handedly devalued gold because he gave away too much of it. Number 3. Augustus Caesar. The first Roman emperor ever had a net worth of about $4.6 trillion. His empire accounted for at least 1/4 of the world's economic output then, and his personal wealth was about 1/5 of his empire. When he was in charge, he nearly doubled his empire and transformed Rome, institutionalizing the first police force and firefighting force. When he died, he famously said, "Behold, I found Rome of clay and leave her to you of marble." Augustus also owned the whole of Egypt at one point. Now that's a tough one to beat. Number 2. Emperor Shenzong of Song. Shao Zhu, or Emperor Shenzong of the Song dynasty, had control over as much as 30% of the global GDP at a time of prosperity and peaceful ruling in China. Emperor Shenzong was a skilled tax collector, while also being a balanced ruler. He institutionalized various programs to help poor peasants and the unemployed, which many believe set the precedent for the modern welfare economy. Although difficult to pinpoint his exact personal wealth, empires back then were highly centralized, meaning much of the wealth was the emperor's own. Some estimate his wealth was over $30 trillion. Number 1. Genghis Khan. Yes, you heard that right. At the top of our list is the Mongolian marauder, who was responsible for the deaths of almost 40 million people. When he would conquer a land, Genghis Khan would slaughter all the inhabitants and take over their land and possessions. Although he did not have much in terms of liquidity, he owned almost 12 million square miles of land across Eurasia. These are valued at trillions today, some say as much as $100 trillion. Despite his wealth, Khan never built a single tomb, temple, or statue bearing his name. That's all, folks.